My uncle stole my fridge, my TV, and every dollar I had, and my family said, let it go and keep the peace. I said, okay. Then I hunted him down and took back everything he owned, right down to the shirt on his back. I'm 27. My uncle Rick had been charming money out of people his entire life, and he had the prison record to prove it. When he got out last spring with nowhere to go, I let him sleep in my spare room, because that is what you do for blood. Just a few weeks, kid, till I get back on my feet, he promised, gripping my shoulder like we were in a movie. 3 weeks later, I came back from a work trip to an apartment that had been hollowed out. My refrigerator was gone, dragged straight out of the kitchen. The television had been pulled clean off the wall. Every dollar of the $1,100 I had saved for an apartment deposit had vanished from the drawer where I kept it. Rick was gone too, along with his duffel bag and my spare key. I called him from the middle of my empty kitchen. Where's my fridge, Rick? Relax. I'm just borrowing a few things to get myself set up, but I'll pay you back the second I land on my feet. Don't be so uptight about stuff. We're blood. He hung up before I could get another word in. Over the next week, I learned he had hauled my fridge and my TV straight into his new place and blown my deposit on a leather jacket he wore to a cousin's barbecue, where he told everyone I had generously helped him get back on his feet. Then the whole family closed ranks around him instead of me. Aunt Carol called within the hour, already busy smoothing it over. Honey, he just got out. He is fragile right now. Do not you dare tear this family apart over a television. He took my deposit money, Carol. I'm sleeping next to a bare wall. It is only things. You are young, you will bounce right back. Be the bigger man and let it go, for the sake of peace. My mom delivered the same speech an hour after that. The entire family had landed on one message, and the message was that the man who robbed me deserved a soft place to land while I deserved to keep my mouth shut about it. Fine, I told them all. I'll let it go. Carol even called me selfish for being upset, and reminded me that Rick had once driven her to the airport back in 2019, as if a single ride canceled out a stolen fridge. Every voice in that family pointed the same direction, and not one of them pointed at the man who had emptied my apartment. Letting it go lasted exactly as long as it took me to find out where Rick had set up shop. He was never hard to track, because Rick could not resist bragging to anybody who held still. My cousin mentioned, without thinking, that Rick had a nice new place across town and a brand new flat screen the size of a door. A brand new flat screen, bought with my deposit, sitting in an apartment furnished out of my own kitchen. So I borrowed a truck and a strong friend named Joel, and I waited for the one thing Rick was always dependable about, which was a Friday night spent at the bar. Rick kept a key tucked under a sad plastic rock beside his door, because Rick had never once in his life expected to land on the wrong end of anything. Joel and I let ourselves in the exact same way Rick had let himself into my whole life. We started with what was mine. My fridge rolled out of his kitchen and up the ramp onto the truck. The television came off his wall first thing. His cash turned up in a coffee can on the counter, more than he had ever taken from me. So I counted out exactly what he owed and left the rest sitting there, because unlike Rick, I keep track. Then I remembered Rick's favorite rule, the one he recited every single time he helped himself to something that was not his. We're blood. It's just stuff. Don't keep score. So I stopped keeping score entirely. Joel and I treated Rick's apartment the precise way Rick had treated mine. The new flat screen came down off the bracket. His couch went out the door and onto the truck. We carried out the coffee table, the lamps, the dishes, the bed frame, the mattress, and the curtains straight off their rods. His closet got cleared down to the bare poles, every shirt and every pair of shoes, because what is a little borrowing between family? We took the welcome mat, the shower curtain, and the light bulbs out of the fixtures, just to be thorough. Joel asked if we were taking it too far. I told him Rick had set the going rate himself. By the time we pulled the door shut, his apartment held one sad pile of nothing and a very large echo. The last thing I did was set a single folded note in the middle of the empty floor. It said, in big friendly letters, letting it go, keeping the peace. Rick called me at 1 in the morning, screaming loud enough that I had to hold the phone away from my ear. You broke into my place. You stole everything I own. I'm calling the cops on you, you ungrateful little punk. I let him go for about 10 seconds. Just let him scream it all out like a car alarm nobody is going to check on. And then I said it in the exact same lazy, easy voice he had used on me when I called him from my bare kitchen. Relax. I'm just borrowing a few things. Don't be so uptight about stuff. We're blood. The line went dead quiet. 3 full seconds of the most beautiful silence I have ever heard in my life. He came back twice as loud, saying he was going to come over right now, saying I had no idea who I was messing with. I waited for him to run out of air. Then I told him the door was locked and the spare key was gone this time, so he could save himself the trip. I hung up before he could get another word in. Within 20 minutes, my phone lit up again. Aunt Carol. Her voice was shaking. He called me sobbing. He has nothing. What on earth did you do? I told her I took back exactly what was taken from me and borrowed a few extras, just like Rick does. She said it was completely different. I asked her to explain how. She went quiet for a second, and I could practically hear her brain trying to build a bridge that was not there. She could not explain how Rick taking my fridge was family helping family, but me taking his couch was a crime. So she went back to the only card she has ever known how to play. He is your uncle. You do not do this to family. And I said, he did it to me first. You told me it was fine. Carol did not have a comeback for that one. She said she was too upset to talk and hung up. Salma called 10 minutes later, my own mother. Her voice was quiet, the kind of quiet that sits on your chest. Baby, Rick is a mess. He is talking about going to the police. You need to give his things back before this gets out of hand. I told her I would return every single item that belonged to Rick the moment Rick returned every single item that belonged to me, including the $1,100 he spent on a leather jacket. A long pause. A leather jacket? Her voice changed just a little, like someone had moved a small piece of furniture in a room she thought she knew by heart. Nobody had told her that part, because Rick is real careful about which details he shares and which ones he buries. I told her yes, a leather jacket, the one he wore to the barbecue, the one he bought with the deposit money I had been saving for months, the one he wore in front of the whole family while telling everyone I gave him the money as a gift. She went quiet again. Then she said, soft and tired, let me talk to Rick. I told her not to bother, because talking to Rick has never changed anything. Not once. Not in 30 years. She did not argue with that. Around 2 in the morning my phone buzzed one more time. Joel, just a text. He stole from you first. He kept a key under a rock. He's not calling calling anybody. Joel was right. Rick has a record. The last thing Rick wants is a cop walking through any situation with his name attached to it. A cop would ask questions. A cop would want to know how Rick got a new apartment and a new flat screen and a leather jacket within weeks of getting out with nothing. The police talk was just noise. The same noise Rick had been using his entire life to make people back down. For the first time, maybe the first time ever, it was not working. I plugged my phone in and lay down on my own mattress, with my own fridge humming in the kitchen where it belonged. The sound of that fridge was the best thing I had heard all day. Just that low, steady hum that says everything is where it is supposed to be. 2 days went by. I muted the family group chat on Sunday morning after I saw the fourth message in a row that started with, "I just think." Then on Monday night, Floyd sent me a private text. "Bro, Rick is telling everybody you trashed his place and stole thousands from him. People are believing him." Rick was rewriting the story. Of course he was. Rick always rewrites the story. He rewrote why he went to prison. He rewrote the story about my fridge and my deposit and called it a generous nephew helping his uncle get back on his feet. Now he was rewriting this one too, turning himself into the victim, pumping up the numbers, making me sound like I had kicked in his door with a baseball bat instead of using the key he left under a plastic rock like a man who has never once had to worry about consequences. I got out a piece of paper and made a list. Left side, everything Rick took from me. The refrigerator, bought used for about $350. The television, worth maybe $400, $1,100 in cash. Right side, everything I took from his apartment, with what was mine marked separately from what was his. I kept it honest, because here is the thing I was not going to pretend about. I took more than what was mine. The stuff I took that was Rick's was worth more than the stuff he took that was mine. That is just the math. But Rick blew through $1,100 of my savings and called it borrowing, and not one person in my family ever asked him to make a list. They just told me to let it go. So I made the list they never asked Rick to make, and I made it for both of us, because somebody in this family had to start keeping honest records. Tuesday evening, Salma knocked on my door. Soft, almost careful. Her face was not tight the way it gets when she is about to lecture me. It was soft, and her eyes looked like she had not been sleeping well. "Rick wants to come over and talk this out," she said, standing in my doorway with her purse still on her shoulder. "Face to face. He says if you just give back his couch and his clothes, he will pay you back for the deposit money. He promised me." I almost laughed. How many times has Rick promised to pay someone back? Salma's face tightened around the mouth. She knew the answer. The answer was a number so high you would run out of fingers on both hands and have to start borrowing other people's. "He is my brother," she said. "I cannot just cut him off." I leaned against the doorframe. "Nobody asked you to cut him off. I'm asking you to stop asking me to pay for him." Something changed in her face right then, like a light switching on in a room that had been dark for a long time. She walked past me, slow, and sat down at my kitchen table. The same table Rick did not bother to steal because it was too heavy to carry by himself. She put her hands flat on the surface and looked at me with the look of someone seeing something they probably should have seen a long time ago. "You really are not going to let this go, are you?" she said, quiet, almost to herself. "No," I told her. "I'm not." She nodded, slow, like each inch of that nod cost her something. Then she said she would bring Rick over on Saturday so we could settle this face to face. I said fine, but I had one condition. Everybody comes. Carol, Floyd, all of them. If the family wants to have an opinion about what I did, then the family can be in the room when we talk about it. No more phone calls, no more secondhand stories. Everybody sits at this table and we go through it together. Salma agreed. She stood up, picked up her purse, and walked to the door. And I swear she looked 10 years older than when she had walked in. Saturday I was up before the sun. I cleaned the apartment top to bottom with a rag and a bottle of spray cleaner, wiped every counter, swept the floor, even cleaned the bathroom mirror. It was not about making things look nice. It was about having control over something. I pulled chairs from around the apartment and set them around the kitchen table, one for each person. And then I took my list and set it right in the center of the table, face down, like a card I was not ready to flip yet. I filled a glass of water for every seat. My mom raised me to be a host, I guess. Even when the people sitting at your table are there to argue with you, you still put water out. 5 glasses, 5 chairs, 1 piece of paper in the middle. This was not going to be a family dinner. This was going to be a reckoning. Carol arrived first and came through the door talking. Grown men acting like children over furniture. I had to cancel plans for this. I pulled out her chair and held it until she sat down. She gave me a look, not sure if I was being polite or making a point, and she was right not to be sure because I was doing both. Floyd came next, walking in quiet the way people walk into a room when they know they played a part in what is happening. I gave him a small nod and he sat down without a word, picking up his water glass and turning it in his hands. Salma came in last before Rick. Her eyes were red and she sat at the end of the table, folded her hands, and said nothing. The 4 of us waited in my clean kitchen with that piece of paper face down in the center, and the only sound was my fridge humming in the corner, steady and calm. 15 minutes late, because Rick has never once in his life respected another person's time, the door opened. Rick walked in like he owned the building. He was wearing the jacket, the $1,100 leather jacket bought with my deposit money. It was brown, it fit him well, and he wore it like a man who thought it made him untouchable. He did not sit down. He planted himself in the middle of my kitchen with his arms crossed and looked around the room slow, from face to face, then pointed at me. "You want to play big man? Let's talk about how you broke into my home and robbed me blind." The room held its breath. Everyone was waiting for me to fire back and make this the screaming match Rick wanted. I did not. I reached across the table and flipped the list over, sliding it to the center where everybody could see it. "Everything I took is on that list," I said, calm. "Everything you took from me is on that list. The fridge, the TV, $1,100 in cash. I took back what was mine and I took extra because you spent my deposit on that jacket you are wearing right now." I did not raise my voice. I just said it and let it sit there, the way numbers sit there, impossible to charm your way around. Carol reached for the list and read it line by line, her lips moving a little as she added things up. Floyd was not looking at the list. Floyd was looking at the jacket, staring at it the way you stare at something when you finally understand what it cost and who paid for it. Salma was looking at the jacket too, her red eyes fixed on that brown leather like she could see every dollar I had saved stitched into the seams. Rick felt the room shift and did what he always does when the ground starts moving under him. He laughed. laughed. Not a real laugh, the kind he uses when he wants everyone to believe that whatever is happening is too silly to take seriously. You're really sitting here with a little spreadsheet? This is family, kid. We don't do accountants. He looked around the room waiting for someone to laugh with him. Nobody did. Carol set the list down flat and looked up at Rick, and her face was different. Not the smoothing over face or the let it go face. Hard and still and aimed right at him. "Rick," she said slowly, spacing each word like it had weight. "Is that the jacket?" The grin stayed on his mouth, but his eyes moved. Just enough. He looked at Carol, then Salma, then Floyd, then back at Carol, doing the only math Rick was any good at, which was figuring out how much trouble he was in and how fast he could talk his way out of it. He had worn the jacket to show me he still had something I could not take back. He had not thought about what it would look like to a room full of people who had just read a list with $1,100 written next to the word cash. The jacket was not a flex anymore. It was evidence. Rick tried to redirect. He pointed at me again, louder. "This kid broke into my apartment. That is a crime. You don't just walk into someone's home and take their bed." I did not flinch. "You walked into my home and took my fridge," I said. "You took my TV off the wall. You took cash out of my drawer. You had a key I gave you in good faith, and then you told everyone I helped you voluntarily." I let that sit and watched the room absorb it. Carol jumped in. "Both of you did wrong. Can we just agree to return each other's things and move forward?" I shook my head. "No, I did not do wrong." I responded. "There is a difference. Rick stole from me, and every person in this room told me to eat it. Not one of you called Rick and told him to bring my fridge back. You told me to be the bigger man." I looked around the table at Carol, Floyd, Salma. So I was. I got bigger than all of you. Nobody had an answer for that. Then Floyd spoke. First time since he had walked in, quiet but steady, the voice of a man who had been sitting on something heavy and finally decided to put it down. "He's right," Floyd said. "I was at that barbecue. Rick was wearing that jacket and telling everybody the kid gave him money to get started. I didn't say anything because I didn't want the hassle. That's on me." The room shifted. I could feel it like a wall cracking down the middle. Salma put her hand flat on the table and looked at Rick. "Did you really tell people he gave you that money?" Rick did not answer. His jaw tightened and he stood there in my kitchen looking like a man who had just stepped on a nail but did not want anyone to know it hurt. Then the mask slipped. His voice got louder, faster, words tumbling out like he could outrun what was happening if he just talked quick enough. "So what?" So I stretched the truth a little. "I just got out. I had nothing. You people have no idea what it's like to start over from zero. I needed things. I needed to feel like a person again." He was pacing now, hands cutting through the air. The charm was gone. What was underneath was raw and ugly and loud. Salma stood up. She rose out of that chair like it took everything she had, and when she spoke, her voice was the quietest it had been all day, but it filled every corner of the room. "Rick, I drove 45 minutes every month to visit you. I put money on your books. I co-signed your phone plan when you got out. My son gave you a roof, and you stole from him and then told me to make him be quiet about it." Rick opened his mouth. Salma held up one hand, palm out, steady as stone. "I am talking." Rick closed his mouth. I had never seen that happen before in my entire life. Salma turned to me. Her eyes were full, but her voice was steady. "I should not have told you to let it go. I was wrong. I was so busy trying to keep things calm that I forgot to keep things fair." I nodded. I did not say it was okay, because it was not okay. But right then, that was enough. Rick made one last play. He stepped toward me and jabbed a finger at my chest. "You think you're better than me? You're just younger. Give it time, kid. Life will chew you up the same way it chewed me up. And when it does, nobody is going to hand you a spare room." I looked at his finger, then at his face. "The difference between you and me is that when someone hands me something, I don't steal the rest of the house. Take the jacket off, Rick." He blinked. "What? The jacket? You bought it with my money. Take it off or I'll add it to the list and we can keep going." Rick looked at Carol. Carol would not meet his eyes. He looked at Floyd. Floyd was looking at the floor. He looked at Salma, and Salma was looking right back at him with an expression that said she was done. Done covering. Done explaining. Done making excuses for a grown man who had never once earned one. Rick had no one. The room was as empty for him as his apartment was when he walked back into it. He reached for the zipper slowly. He pulled that jacket off one sleeve at a time, and every inch looked like it cost him something. He dropped it on the table, right on top of the list, and walked out of my apartment without a word. Carol folded the jacket and said, "I owe you an apology." "I do." Floyd squeezed my shoulder on the way out. Salma stayed behind, washed the glasses, dried them, put them away. Before she left, she held my face in both hands and said, "You turned out good. That part is not because of me, but I'm proud of it anyway." Joel picked up the truck the next morning and we returned Rick's couch, his bed frame, his clothes, everything that was not originally mine. I kept the jacket, sold it online for $400, and put the money toward a new deposit. Rick never called again. The fridge kept humming all night.